Yeah, you're welcome back.
Yeah, let's talk about
Fish. Yeah. So yesterday, the Fisheries Ministry, led by the Minister, Madam Afole-Kwe, announced that this year, for the first time, there will be a closed season from the 15th of May until the 15th of June. During that time, all inshore fishing will cease. So the fishermen cannot take their canoes out or their boats out to fish inshore. The trawlers, the bigger boats that trawl deep sea and catch the fish known as demersals, the ones that live at the bottom of the sea. The trawlers, they can continue their business. Why was this necessary? Well, it was because a scientific study discovered that at the rate at which our fish stock has been depleting, and the fishermen will tell you when they go out, they don't catch fish. Yesterday, Kojo Nyako interviewed a fisherman who came back after hours at sea and could only find 2 fish in his net. That's the situation in our sea right now when it comes to fish. They're running out. So fishermen haven't had a bumper harvest in years. And so that's the situation. Scientists discovered that if that situation is not reversed, by 2020, give or take a year, by 2020, all of our small pelages will have disappeared. Small pelages make up 75% of our marine fish stock. So can you imagine that 75% of our marine fish stock is going to disappear by 2020 if we do nothing about it? So their recommendation was allow the fish to spawn, to breed. They breed in August. That is the peak time. They start in July, breed in August. So allow them to breed so that we will replenish the stock and you can go back to fishing. They started advising government to do this from 2016. And according to the chairman of the working group, the Scientific and Technical Working Group, they advised government in 2016 to have a closed season. But government said, no, it will be political suicide. It was an election year. They didn't want to do anything to upset the fishermen.
So that decision was not taken?
So it wasn't taken. Last year, there was an announcement in June that there will be a closed season.
Yeah.
The fishermen didn't agree. The opposition spoke against it. And that was the most fascinating press conference. I attended it. I was listening to the opposition trying to negotiate with science. I mean, science is absolute.
Yeah, definitely.
It says by next year, the thing will be finished. So have a closed season at a time when the fish can breed. This is science. But the opposition were arguing with science and saying, no, the government is being insensitive. They should be sensitive too. I don't know how sensitive it will be to allow the fish to deplete. But anyway, they cancelled this closed season last year. This year, they decided to go ahead. So they had stakeholder involvement, engagement, and at the end of it, they made a decision. And that is the decision that was communicated yesterday.
And there's always also been a bit of indecision in the decision itself, whether the time that we want to announce the closing of the fishing season is the right one. And still, it looks like, Kojo, we're still going contrary to what the scientific facts are.
Well, maybe we should listen for ourselves. The fisheries minister spent some time with me yesterday. I had quite a few questions that I wanted to hear her answers to, because the announcement of a closed season in May, at a time when the fish do not breed, I was confused as to the benefit of it. So I asked her. I want you to pay very close attention to the answers she gives, how she gives them. And in fact, even to the questions I ask and how she interprets them. Enjoy. So we're here with the Fisheries Minister, Madam Afole-Kwe. She has just announced the closed season for 2019. It's going to start from the 15th of May and end 15th of May and end on the 15th of June. Madam, thank you for speaking to us. You explained in your presentation that the best time for the close season would have been August, but you are going for May because there is minimal reproduction of the fish. Can you define for us minimum? Exactly how much reproduction will there be in this close season?
Yes. It is a production period for a certain class of fish called the demersals. They are the bottom of the sea, and not really the resource that is exploited by the canoe fishermen. And so that's why we classify that as minimal fish production or spawning around that time. Yes. It is towards the upwelling where the cold water from the bottom of the sea comes up, to the surface and provides greens or food for the fish to consume around July, August. So there's a lot of production of food, and then the fish also get pregnant and they spawn at that time. Around July, August. It peaks in August, yes. So we would have chosen August, which is the best time for the close season. That is the peak of the reproduction season. But the fishermen themselves have chosen May, June. We reluctantly accepted this date because it has been very difficult trying to get the fishermen to accept to do the close season because they have festivals around the time where we chose to do the close season. So because of their festivals, and as Ghanaians, our festivals are really important to us. For me, as a Ga, my Homowo is really important to me. So most of the festivals along the coast are also celebrated within the time that we expect the fishermen to do the close season. And so for the start, they have accepted to do it within a minimal production period, fish production period. We expect that gradually, when they see the benefits, the benefits will not be seen largely within a month of close season, but as we do it continuously over the years, as we institutionalize the close season and do it yearly, we will see improvements in the build-up of the stocks. So this is just the beginning, and we expect that in the coming years, the fishermen again would say that, oh yes, we have seen some improvement in the stocks, and so we would like to shift it closer to the peak production period. We are open, we are very flexible, and so we will still continue to engage with them and see, and see the way forward. So for now, we have accepted the May-June close season for the artisanals. It is not for all fleets. It is just for the artisanal and inshore fisheries. The industrial sector is doing it from the 1st of August and up to the 30th of September. We accepted the May 15th to June 15th by the inshore and artisanal fishers, also because the industrial trawlers have agreed that they want to do it in the peak production period, and they exploit heavier the resource. Their levels of exploitation are higher, much higher than the canoe fisher.
Are you still talking about the small pelagic fishes? Are you saying that the trawlers exploit the small pelagics more than the artisanal fishermen?
No. The trawlers are licensed to do bottom trawling.
The demersals?
The demersals. They are licensed to do bottom trawling. And yet, we find a lot of them doing surface trawling, which is wrong. So since for some time now, some of the trawlers have flouted the regulation, and they are doing surface trawling. At least when we do the close season, it will mean that during August and September, there will be no exploitation of the pelagics. That is what it means. We've been trying to get these trawlers to stop doing the surface trawling. But some of them are able to outwit the system and use the fishing gear that is used to do surface trawling. Now we've brought on board gear technologists. We don't have enough gear technologists, fishing gear technologists in Ghana. We have just a few. Just recently we got them engaged, and we are training. They are in to train more gear technologists, so that when the trawlers are monitored, especially during the close season or after the close season, when they are monitored and you are found to be using the wrong gear, then we can, arrest you and apply the sanctions.
So let me ask about the big trawlers, and you are saying that the close season for them will be in August.
Yes.
Now, they are already breaking the law by catching the small pelagics.
Yes.
Why do you think they will obey a close season if they are disobeying the law to catch small pelagics in the first place?
Yes, the trawlers, this is not the first time they are doing a close season. Last year they did a close season in February, but it didn't have enough impact because it was the wrong timing for them. And so this time that they have accepted to do it at the right time, it will have a positive effect on the small pelagics.
Does this mean they are allowed to catch small pelagics in every other month of the year except for August?
No, no. They are not
Why
allowed.
close season? Why not simply ban them? Why are you closing August alone? Just ban them from catching the small pelagics.
We don't need to ban them because the law has already stated clearly that they can't do it.
So enforce the law?
Enforcement, exactly. So now
close season, just enforce the law.
The close season is a management measure. It's a way of trying to rebuild the stocks. So it's a management measure that.
But is that an admission that you can't control them at any other time of the year?
No. If you would allow me, let me speak. The close season is a management measure in trying to rebuild the stocks. Now, the exploitation of the small pelagics by the trawlers is an infraction. It's an offense by the trawlers. So that is, there are sanctions that the law requires to be applied. After the close season, if any vessel goes out there, that was why I told you before now that we have now brought on the gear technologists. So the gear technologists will determine the gears that should be used by the trawlers. Because we didn't have the gear technologists, enough of the gear technologists. So most of the cases that go to court, some of them are not properly prosecuted. But now that we have brought on board the gear technologies and we are training more, the moment you commit an offense, there's a gear technologist that says that, yes, this assesses your gear and says that, yes, you went to fishing with this particular gear and it is for surface trawling and not for bottom trawling. So the law becomes clear on the sanctions that must be applied. So we are dealing with the issues from several ends. Illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, which surface trawling by trawlers is also an illegal activity. But the close season is a management practice that we are implementing.
I'm just curious because it seems that you do want to enforce the law for the trawlers. You want to, that's why you're bringing in the gear technology and so forth. So rather than giving them a closed season, which might send the message that we can catch small pelagics at any other time except in the closed season.
No.
Why not simply apply the law, get your gear technology, apply it, and simply ban or enforce the ban on trawlers from catching small pelagics? The closed season is the thing that I'm trying to understand, why there is a need to use a closed season when the law already says they shouldn't be doing it.
We are not using, I want you to have this, much clearer.
Okay.
We are not using the closed season to stop people from committing offenses. It is a management practice. It is a measure to try to rebuild the stocks. So that is different from an offense that has been committed and, the law, has to be enforced. We have to get these two clearly. Closed season is a management practice, but surface trawling by trawlers that have been licensed to do bottom trawling is an infraction. I hope you understand. So there are two different things. So we are doing the closed season not as law enforcement, but we are applying a management measure.
But that would mean
the stocks. Okay. Now, when as a vessel operator or a trawler operator, you go out there, even after the closed season, you go out there and use your fishing gear to do surface trawling when you have actually been licensed to do bottom trawling. What it means is that the law will be applied. The sanctions will be applied. You'll be taken to court. And so we have brought on the gear technologies to immediately say that, yes, you took this fishing gear to fish and it is wrong. Then that will be clear.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the closed season for the small pelagists, which is May 15 to June 15. Now, you mentioned that there is minimal spawning at that time. I was trying to understand, but it appears that rather the spawning in that period is for the demersals. Mm-hmm. So why not have a closed season for the trawlers in May, because they are the ones who catch demersals, and then have the closed season for the artisanal fishermen in August, which is when their fish also spawn? I mean, that's science. Why not simply follow the science?
Yes, we are following science even in this period, where, you see, as a government, we do not impose decisions on people. We enforce the law. We engage with the people, and we come to an agreement. There should be a win-win situation. It is not in the interest of government to just be running after fishermen and say that we insist that you do it in August. If you don't do it in August, we apply sanctions. No, it is a management practice which should be adhered to naturally. We want people, we want the closed season to be demand-driven so that the Navy will not have too many cases on their hands. Also, we are considering the fact that there's some minimal spawning for the demersals at that time. And then the trawlers are at the moment doing the wrong thing. The trawlers themselves are also doing the wrong thing by harvesting small pelagics. So if the trawlers also do a closed season around this time, it means that the small pelagics that they are harvesting will have some respite. Will have some rest.
But the small pelagics are not spawning at this time.
No, what I'm saying actually is that in August, the trawlers will be going for a closed season. Right. In August. So because now, at the moment, they are exploiting the small pelagics. When they do a closed season in August, this year, when they do a closed season in August, it means that they will not be harvesting the small pelagics. Right. Okay. Then it will still show. It will still have, some benefits will be accrued. Okay.
Yes. So at the moment, in the May 15 to June 15, it is the demersals that are spawning.
Yes.
But the artisanal fishermen don't catch demersals.
They don't catch demersals.
The trawlers do.
They don't catch demersals.
But the trawlers do.
The trawlers do catch. They are supposed to be catching. We license them for demersals.
So they will be catching these demersals while they are spawning.
In fact, the exploitation by the canoe fishermen is just, let's say, about 30% of the levels of the exploitation of the trawlers. So what it means is that when the canoe fishermen do their closed season for a month in May, June, it wouldn't have much impact on their resource, the portion of the resource that they are exploiting. And so that was why originally we wanted them to do it in August. But if the trawlers do it in August, September, it means that presently, as they are doing the wrong thing, even by exploiting the small pelagics, when they rest, when the trawlers rest in August and September, it means that the small pelagics will be free of exploitation. Then they can also grow.
But my question is, the demersals who are spawning in May, June, they will still be caught while they are spawning by the trawlers?
It's a minimal spawning period.
For the demersals?
Yes.
Right.
Let me also state clearly that in August, September, when spawning peaks, it is not just for the small pelagics. Also for the
Right, I'm with you. Okay. Now I want to read this from your own information sheet that you gave out today. This is what you said: that total landings of people's fish being the small pelagics. Yes. Yes, total landings of the people's fish in Ghana have decreased by 86% over the last 20 years. Okay, and currently, when fish come together to spawn in August, fishermen often, catch them. Now, this is what you're saying, and this is the scary part. You're saying that the Fisheries Science and Technical Working Group, that include fishers, predicts that the fishery could completely collapse by 2020 without immediate action. 2020 is next year. So this is the 1 year we have before the possible complete collapse. And it is supported by the research here that was funded by USAID. We have 1 year to go. And in that 1 year, we are actually implementing a closed season for the artisanals who benefit from it at the wrong time of the year. So how are you planning to reverse a trend that could end up with the extinction of small pelagics by next year by having a closed season at the wrong time this year?
I will not accept the word wrong. It is not the wrong time.
But you said to me yourself that August is the best time. August is the time when the fish spawn.
Yes.
In May, June, it is the demersals that spawn minimally. Not even the small pelagics don't spawn in May, June. So your closed season is at the wrong time of the year, according to your own, what you have said to me.
No, it is not at the wrong time of the year. What I said was that there's some minimal spawning around the time that they have chosen, yes. But I want you to consider the fact that the trawlers at the moment are exploiting the small pelagics. They are exploiting the resource of the canoe fishermen. When you hear canoe fishermen crying, making a lot of complaining, what they are saying is that the trawlers are exploiting their resource.
And that's illegal?
Yes, very much illegal. So if the trawlers do a closed season in August, September, it means that they will not exploit the small pelagics at that time.
So August, September is the right time for the trawlers to have their closed season?
Yes, because demersals, pelagics are spawning.
They are all spawning. Very good. So August is the right time?
Yes.
That means May, June
that is a peak.
Not the right time?
No, it is within a period of time. It is spawning takes place within a period of time, but it peaks in August. So that was why, because we see the stocks dwindling,
yes,
and there's a high possibility of the collapse of that industry. We felt that we have to, quickly take an action. We have to, because the Marine Fisheries Management Plan was actually supposed to have been implemented from 2015 to 2019. So we are still struggling with getting the inshore and then the artisanal fishers to do the closed season. So if we quickly take an action around this time, and especially with the industrial trawlers who are exploiting, they exploit the resource much heavier than any other sector, I mean, than the inshore sector. Yeah. So when they do a close season within the peak production period, it means that there's going to be, the benefits will be seen.
Yeah, and I suppose what I'm saying is that you have already established that August is the right time. That's why you want the trawlers to have their close season then, because that's the right time.
That is a peak period.
Yes.
Yes.
But in May, June, the small pelagias are not spawning.
That is when the those who are dragging their feet, which is the artisanal sector, those who from 2015 till now, when the management plan was actually supposed to have been implemented, have never done a close season. They have entirely refused to do the close season. So now that they have even agreed to do it, if they have agreed to do it within a minimal spawning period.
Well, let's be clear, there's no spawning of small pelagias in May, June. It's all in August. That's according to this report here by USA.
We are talking about reduction of efforts. We are talking about reduction of effort in the exploitation of the fish, the entire marine stocks. Yeah. So if the canoe fishermen decide to do the close season in May, June, it is still a reduction of efforts.
But at that time, the fish will not reproduce.
And that's why I'm saying, I keep repeating that those who are exploiting that resource even heavier than the canoe, I have agreed to do it within the peak period.
Which is back to August, which we already agree is peak.
Yes.
But that suggests then that the May, June one is pointless.
Maybe that is, for me, I don't see it as pointless. I see it as a time when there wouldn't be, a lot of spawning, but there will be some minimal spawning, around that time.
Well, and the science doesn't support it. The science says there will be no spawning until August of small pelagias.
You were here last year. When the fishermen, the artisanal fishers especially, refused, they said, no, you haven't done enough engagement with us, we will not do it at all. Yeah. Now, they have agreed to do it within a period that their portion of the resource is not actually spawning. Right. Okay. So why don't we accept that as a first step? And then we move on gradually.
Do we have time?
Yes, we have time, because now, at least those who exploit heavier are doing it within the peak production period. So
they shouldn't be exploiting
some improvements. There'll still be some improvements in the stocks. There'll still be some percentage of improvement in the stocks. And we will do some assessment of the stocks after the close season.
Right.
Yes, we'll do some assessments and then we'll tell the improvements. It wouldn't be seen, largely, but there will be some levels of improvements. So we will do the assessment after the close season, and then the story will be told.
And because 2020 is the deadline, if you do the assessment and it turns out that it didn't work, we've lost our small pelagias, then what? It
will definitely work, because the trawlers are doing it in August, September.
And these are trawlers who are breaking the law anyway. But we are trusting them to obey the law during the close season.
In fact, the trawlers, this is not the first time they are doing close season. They are not the difficult group.
But you said when they did close season last year, there wasn't much impact.
What I said was that they did it at the time that they did it in February.
Who told them to do that?
They agreed to do it at that time.
So it is the exploiters who are leading the conversation of how we protect our resources?
No. Before I came in as a minister, the trawlers had started in February. So
you say they decided to do it in February?
In fact, there's some spawning at certain times of the year. I told you that the tuna sector have done their close season January, February. Yeah. Okay, so it means that there's some spawning at certain
Tuna.
periods. Yes, at certain periods of the year. Even in November, December, there's some spawning. Okay, but you see, in February, the levels of spawning of pelagics is virtually not there. So when we realize that they have chosen even the wrong timing, we've gotten them to understand that it is even better to do it around August, and they have agreed. Okay, when they realize that, oh, the time that we chose previously in 2016, the time that we chose to do it was even not so good, they have agreed again to do it around this time. As for the industrial sector, as for the industrial trawlers, they started, I think, 2016. So it means that they are already complying with the close season.
So they are complying with close season, but not complying with the law that bans them, makes it illegal for them to catch small pelagics.
Yes, so that's why we are beefing up the enforcement levels.
Let's talk about.
We have brought in the gear technologies. We are engaging more with the Marine Police and the Fisheries Enforcement Unit. We are engaging more with the Navy. Yes, to ensure that we will not erode the benefits of the close season.
All right.
After the close season, the benefits of the close season, we should be able to protect, those benefits in order for us to save the stocks.
Let's talk about the reasons why it's been difficult to regulate these trawlers. There aren't many of them, operating in Ghanaian waters, less than 70. Less than 70 trawlers are registered operating in Ghanaian waters.
Not less, a little more than.
What figure do you have?
We have 74.
74, okay. That's a finite number. Only one of them is owned by a Ghanaian, I understand.
I'm not too sure about that, because we don't license vessels for foreigners.
Right.
Yeah.
So actually, as far as you understand, they are all owned by Ghanaians.
Yes, yes.
There are no Chinese owners.
Ghanaian companies that, I would not entirely say. Well, we license them for Ghanaian companies, Ghanaians. We license them for Ghanaians. If a Ghanaian has an agreement with a Chinese company, if a Ghanaian company agrees with a Chinese company to do business, okay, it doesn't really mean that there isn't a Chinese involvement.
But that would be unlawful, wouldn't it?
I don't think so. Our laws allow hire purchase agreements. Our laws allow that.
So what are you saying?
Agreement. But we, as the Fisheries Ministry, we license them for Ghanaians.
So what you're saying?
When a Ghanaian company comes and says that I want to license my vessel, we will not refuse that Ghanaian company. But when there's a hire purchase agreement with a Chinese company, that is not us. That is not the Fisheries Ministry that is, doing that.
So the Chinese are allowed to hire Ghanaian trawlers for fishing in Ghanaian waters.
What would you do if you want to enter into a business and you don't have the resources to purchase the vessel outright?
No, I'm checking. Is it
lawful?
lawful?
To have a hire purchase agreement. Our laws allow hire purchase agreements.
So the Chinese can hire a Ghanaian trawler and fish in Ghanaian waters.
It's a Ghanaian company that we license. We license for Ghanaians.
So if a Chinese company hires a Ghanaian trawler to fish in Ghanaian waters, is it legal or illegal?
Maybe you have to go to the law to check that, because
the Fisheries Minister.
Yes, the Fisheries Minister is saying that I am licensing for Ghanaians. So if there's a Chinese behind the Ghanaian, that is not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the Ghanaian who is licensing the vessel for himself.
So you're not.
So I do that for the Ghanaian.
So you're not looking at whether the Chinese are hiring them to fish in our waters.
The Ghanaian comes to the Fisheries Ministry. I want to license a vessel. How? I don't have that right to refuse the Ghanaian.
Are you not the regulator of how they use your license?
Yes.
And is it legal for them to be hired by Chinese?
The fact that somebody has a hire purchase agreement on a vessel with a Chinese company doesn't prevent the person from operating as a Ghanaian in Ghanaian waters.
Okay, let's wrap up with this. The science says that the best time would have been August. But you've talked about how you've tried to negotiate with the fishermen to get them to do August, and they are not, it's not convenient for them for many reasons, including the festivals and so forth. I want to ask this. You have negotiated with them to come to this arrangement for this year. But can you negotiate with science? Science says do it in August. You are negotiating to do it.
It's not strictly August. It is not strictly August.
Allow me to read this to you.
Spawning is within a period of time.
Right. Allow me to read this to you. This is under the recommendations section of a USAID Ghana Sustainable Fisheries Management Project report. And it says a 1-month closure on all fleets, canoes, inshore and industrial fisheries, except tuna. August. That is their recommendation, by the way, a 1-month closure. August has been selected as the month to yield the most return for rebuilding small pelagic resources. It coincides with peak spawning period, which allows the broodstock to reproduce and juveniles to survive and replace the lost biomass. So if you do a close season at any other time, you can't expect this result.
No. You also read from what you read. Yes. It said it coincides with peak spawning period. It means that it spans over a period of time.
Yes. If you are not doing the close season at the peak period,
are you not doing it at the peak period? I just told you, I've told you time with that number.
May to June 15th is not the peak period.
Yes, and I'm telling you that 1st August to 30th September, the heavy exploiters, which are the industrial trawlers, are doing it.
But are you aware of some research by the University of Cape Coast that says that if you take any of the cake that the trawlers produce when they catch the fish, when they freeze it into cakes, over 50% of every cake is small pelagic fish, which they are not allowed to catch. So if you want evidence, all you have to do is take their cake.
Yes, of course. But the gear as well is also very important, the gear that you use. Because when you go to court, a lot of issues come up. So we need to have, more evidence to prove.
Have you analyzed their cake?
Yes. We have. In fact, when I came to office, I even set up a task force, and the task force has been, they've been going there to inspect the cake. I mean, the fish that they bring, they've been inspecting, and they even measure. They have a way of measuring. They have a way of measuring the size of the fish, and various species of fish have their various sizes. They don't all grow to the same size. So depending on the species, you determine whether or not you are allowed to catch that fish.
So what did you find?
But the gear is also very important, and so we prosecute those ones.
So you have prosecuted
but we
some.
need more evidence, and that's why we are training the gear technologists.
All right.
Yes, so that cases will not go to court and come back, without actually, getting sanctions applied, and all that.
Madam Afole-Kwe, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what happened when I spoke to the fisheries minister.
Very revealing, but revealing in many parts. That there's an aspect, especially the beginning of this interaction, that she agrees that the scientific basis for which they are choosing or making this decision is wrong, is flawed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they are making compromises because they have to.
Yeah.
But if there's a policy direction, it should better the lives of those who are involved in the industry or for the general good of the industry itself. Yeah. That's quite baffling.
This idea of negotiating with the fishermen to decide when to do the close season, it's kind of like, imagine if the president had said, Galamsey is damaging our water bodies.
Exactly.
So I'm going to negotiate with the, the small scale miners to see when
it's or the number of times they have to go
see how much I'll allow them to damage our water.
Exactly.
That's the same posture that the fisheries ministry has with the fishermen.
Exactly.
It's not a negotiation.
Not at all.
It is science. Science says if you don't do something by next year, no more fish. And you are negotiating. Who are you negotiating with? Anyway, I wanted to, if you don't mind, just before we go, I wanted to very quickly point out something. You notice that the fisheries minister, I was asking her whether or not it is legal for the Chinese to be involved in fishing in our waters.
And I remember she said that there was no Chinese involved at all.
Yes, and I kept asking her, is she sure that there are no Chinese people involved? And she said, well, they license Ghanaians to own the trawlers, but they can do hire purchase agreement with the Chinese. Well, I want to read the law so that we can all decide whether indeed her interpretation of it is accurate or not. So this is the Fisheries Act 2002, Act 625, and I'm reading from section 47, which deals with qualification as local, industrial, or semi-industrial fishing vessel. So just the first paragraph, I don't need to read the whole thing. It says, a local, industrial, or semi-industrial fishing vessel is a fishing vessel, A, owned or controlled by a citizen of Ghana, the government, or owned or controlled by a company or partnership registered by law in Ghana, which has its principal place of business in Ghana and the share of which is beneficially owned wholly by the government, a citizen, a public corporation established by law in Ghana, or a combination of any of them. So the law itself is
explicit.
Yes, it is designed to make sure that if you're not a Ghanaian or a Ghanaian company or the government of Ghana, you cannot get a license to fish with a trawler in Ghanaian waters. So how then can it be legal for a Chinese person to come and hire the boats that he is not allowed to own, to do the activity that he is not allowed to do?
Definitely.
In our waters.
And we do know that many of these Chinese fishing trawlers are actually scattered around the coast of West Africa, maybe with a section of Nigeria. And when I had that interaction with those fisher folk, especially those migrant ones from Cape Coast to Tuam, many of them also coming from Aflawo to Jamestown, they said constantly they've had many inhibitions which also portend negatively to their trade from these Chinese fisher trawlers. Now, we do know that the sections of the sea that they tend to fish is beyond where we're going to have this pelagius and all that.
Yes,
but ultimately, they also tend to deplete the fish stock generally we have.
And they're not allowed to be there. That's the important thing.
So one, they are not allowed, but our government is overlooking incessantly the constant depletion of the general fish stock that we have. And I believe that our government need to act in the interest of us, the citizens. It's sad that we're having this situation.
Yeah, they should keep negotiating with the fishermen. When we run out of fish, there will be no argument to have.